The Fall. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft ding, sealing Emma's fate. She stared at her reflection in the polished metal, trying to process what had just happened in the conference room. Her hands trembled as she clutched the folder containing the marketing campaign she'd worked on for 3 months. "This can't be real," she whispered to herself. But it was real. The words still echoed in her mind. "Effective immediately, your employment with Kane Industries is terminated." The elevator stopped at the 32nd floor, and Emma stepped out into the bustling marketing department. Her colleagues looked up from their desks, their faces a mixture of curiosity and pity. Word traveled fast in corporate America. Emma Jessica from accounting approached cautiously. "Is it true? Did they really—" "Yes," Emma's voice cracked. "They fired me." Jessica's face fell. "But why? Your campaigns have been incredible. The Henderson account alone brought in $2 million. Emma shook her head, still in shock. "They said I leaked confidential information to a competitor, but I would never do that." "That's insane. Everyone knows you're the most loyal person here." Emma walked to her desk in a daze. 3 years of her life sat in neat piles around her computer. Photos of her and her best friend Sarah at last year's company picnic. The little cactus plant Sarah had given her for good luck. Awards from successful campaigns. All of it meant nothing now. "Miss Parker?" A security guard appeared beside her desk. He was young, maybe 25, and looked uncomfortable. "I'm sorry, but I need to escort you out. Company policy." Emma nodded, fighting back tears. Can I pack my things?" "Of course. Take your time." She grabbed a cardboard box from the supply closet and began filling it with her personal belongings. Each item felt heavier than the last. The framed photo of her parents went in first, then her favorite coffee mug. The stress ball shaped like a little heart that Sarah had bought her during a particularly tough week. Around her, the office had gone quiet. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Keyboards fell silent. Everyone was watching, but trying to pretend they weren't. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. "Just heard. Coming up now." Before Emma could respond, the elevator doors opened, and Sarah burst out, her dark hair flying behind her as she rushed over. "This is crazy," Sarah said, immediately pulling Emma into a hug. "Tell me everything." Emma's composure finally cracked. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over as she clung to her best friend. "They said I sold secrets to Morrison Marketing, that I gave them inside information about the Henderson campaign." Emma pulled back, wiping her eyes. "Sarah, I swear I didn't do anything wrong." "Of course you didn't. You're the most honest person I know." Sarah's brown eyes flashed with anger. "Who accused you?" "Richard Kane, Alexander's uncle. He said they had proof." "What kind of proof?" "Emails, phone records, things that don't make sense because I never contacted Morrison Marketing ever." Sarah frowned. "This smells like a setup to me." The security guard cleared his throat gently. "Miss Parker, I hate to rush you, but—" "Right, sorry." Emma continued packing, her movements mechanical. As she worked, she became aware of someone watching her from above. She looked up toward the executive floor, visible through the glass walls. There, standing at the window of his corner office, was Alexander Kane himself. Even from this distance, she could see his steel-gray eyes fixed on her. His expression was unreadable, but he didn't look away when their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed frozen. Alexander Kane was 32, impossibly wealthy, and devastatingly handsome in the way that only came from generations of good breeding and expensive everything. He'd taken over Kane Industries when his father died 5 years ago, and since then he'd been known as the coldest CEO in New York. Emma had seen him around the office, of course, but they'd never spoken directly. She was just a mid-level marketing coordinator. He was a billionaire who probably didn't even know her name. So why was he staring at her like that? "Earth to Emma,"
She waved a hand in front of her face. "You're staring at the Ice King." Emma blinked and looked away. "Sorry, do you think he knows what really happened?" "Hard to say. Rich guys like that usually don't get involved in the day-to-day drama." Emma finished packing and closed the box. The security guard offered to carry it for her, but she shook her head. She needed to maintain some dignity. The walk to the elevator felt like a funeral march. Her colleagues watched silently as she passed their desks. Some offered small smiles of support. Others looked away, probably relieved it wasn't them. In the elevator, Sarah squeezed her hand. "This isn't over. We'll figure out who really did this." "It doesn't matter now," Emma said quietly. "I'm done. Finished. Who's going to hire me after this? Kane Industries is one of the biggest companies in the city. If word gets out that I'm a corporate spy, that's not going to happen. We won't let it." The elevator reached the lobby, and they walked through the marble-floored space toward the revolving doors. Emma had entered this building every morning for 3 years, filled with purpose and ambition. Now she was leaving with nothing but a cardboard box and a ruined reputation. Outside, the New York afternoon was crisp and bright, too bright for how dark Emma felt inside. "Come on, Sarah," said, hailing a taxi. "You're staying at my place tonight. We'll order Chinese food and figure out our next move." "I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm telling." Sarah's voice was firm. "You're my best friend, Emma. We're in this together." An hour later, Emma sat on Sarah's couch, staring at her phone. 7 missed calls from her landlord. She didn't need to listen to the voicemails to know what they were about. "How bad is it?" Sarah asked, setting down a cup of tea. "Bad. I'm already 2 months behind on rent. Without my job?" Emma's voice trailed off. "You'll find something else. You're brilliant at what you do." "Not if Richard Kane destroys my reputation first." Emma's phone buzzed with a text. Unknown number. She almost deleted it without reading, but something made her hesitate. She opened the message. "Ms. Parker, this is Alexander Kane. I have something that belongs to you. My business card. You dropped it in the lobby. AK." Attached was a photo of a white business card on a marble surface. Emma frowned. She hadn't dropped anything, and she definitely didn't have Alexander Kane's business card. She showed it to Sarah, who raised an eyebrow. "Weird. Why would he lie about you dropping his business card?" Emma stared at the message, then at the photo of the business card. Alexander Kane's name was embossed in elegant silver letters, along with his personal phone number. "I don't know," Emma said slowly, "but I think he wants me to have his number." The question was, why? Emma looked at the business card photo again, her mind racing. Was this Alexander Kane's way of reaching out? Did he know something about her firing that he couldn't say publicly? Or was this just another game from another rich, powerful man who thought he could control her life? She set the phone down but kept staring at the screen. The business card seemed to glow with possibility or danger. What did the coldest billionaire in New York want with her?
Unexpected encounters. Emma spent the next morning walking the streets of Manhattan with a folder full of resumes. The autumn air was crisp, and her breath made small clouds as she hurried from one office building to another. Most receptionists took her resume with polite smiles and promises to be in touch, but Emma could see it in their eyes. The moment they saw Kane Industries as her last employer, something shifted. Word traveled fast in the marketing world. By noon, she was exhausted and discouraged. She ducked into a small cafe on Fifth Avenue, hoping to grab a quick coffee and regroup before her next interview. The place was crowded with the lunch rush. Emma stood in line, checking her phone for any responses to the applications she'd submitted online. Nothing. Not even a rejection email. She ordered a large coffee and found a small table by the window. The cafe was warm and bustling, filled with the sounds of conversation and the hiss of the espresso machine. For a moment, Emma allowed herself to feel
almost normal. She pulled out her laptop and opened her email, hoping for some miracle. Instead, she found 3 more rejection emails that had come in during her morning interviews. "Thank you for your interest, but we've decided to move forward with other candidates. While your experience is impressive, we don't feel you're the right fit. We'll keep your resume on file for future opportunities." Emma's eyes burned with frustrated tears. She closed the laptop and reached for her coffee, needing the caffeine to get through the rest of the day. But as she lifted the cup, her phone buzzed. Startled, she jerked slightly, and hot coffee sloshed over the rim. "Oh no!" she gasped, jumping up. But it was too late. The coffee had splashed across the small table and was now dripping onto the floor, and onto the perfectly polished shoes of the man at the table next to her. "I'm so sorry." Emma grabbed napkins, frantically trying to clean up the mess. "I didn't mean to—" She looked up and froze. Alexander Kane stood there, coffee dripping from his expensive suit jacket, looking down at her with those same steel-gray eyes she remembered from yesterday. Emma's heart stopped. "Mr. Kane, what are you doing here?" "Having coffee. Or I was." Emma's face burned with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry. Let me pay for your dry cleaning. Your suit must cost more than my rent." To her surprise, Alexander smiled, just a small curve of his lips, but it completely transformed his face. "It's just coffee," he said. "These things happen." He bent down and helped her gather the soggy napkins. His hands brushed hers briefly, and Emma felt an unexpected jolt of electricity. "Here, let me buy you another coffee," Alexander said, standing up, "to replace the one you spilled." Emma stared at him. "You want to buy me coffee? After I just ruined your suit?" "It seems like the least I can do." Emma shook her head. "I don't understand. Your uncle fired me for something I didn't do. Today you're offering me to buy coffee. What's going on?" Alexander's expression grew serious. "Can we sit down, please?" Against her better judgment, Emma nodded. Alexander went to the counter and returned with 2 fresh coffees and a plate of pastries. "You didn't have to—" "I know." He sat across from her, his presence somehow making the small cafe table feel even smaller. "How's the job hunt going?" Emma almost laughed. "Terrible. No one wants to hire someone who was fired from Kane Industries for corporate espionage." "You weren't fired for corporate espionage." "Tell that to every HR department in the city." Alexander was quiet for a moment, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "What if I told you that I know you didn't leak anything to Morrison Marketing?" Emma's hand tightened around her cup. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I know who really did it." The cafe suddenly felt too loud, too crowded. Emma leaned forward, lowering her voice. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that you were set up, and I'm saying that I'm sorry it happened." Emma studied his face, looking for any sign that this was some kind of game, but Alexander's gray eyes were steady and sincere. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it wasn't fair, and because—" He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Because I've been watching your work for months. You're incredibly talented, Emma. What happened to you shouldn't have happened." "You've been watching my work?" "The Henderson campaign was brilliant. The way you repositioned their brand identity, the emotional appeal you created, it was exactly what they needed." Emma felt a flutter of pride, quickly followed by suspicion. "Mr. Kane, why are you really here? This can't be a coincidence." Alexander smiled again, and Emma noticed how it made tiny lines appear at the corners of his eyes. "You're right. It's not a coincidence. I was hoping to run into you." "Why?" "Because I have a proposition for you." Emma's guard went up immediately. "What kind of proposition?" "A freelance project. 6 months, working directly with me on a new campaign for Kane Industries' expansion into the European market. Emma's coffee cup rattled against the saucer as she set it down. You're offering me a job after your uncle just destroyed my career? I'm offering you a chance to prove that my uncle was wrong. And what do you get out of it? Alexander leaned back in his chair, studying her. A brilliant marketing strategist who isn't afraid to challenge conventional thinking. Emma shook her head. This doesn't make sense. You're the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You could hire anyone. Why me? Because you're the best at what you do, and because... He paused again, something flickering across his face. Because I believe in giving second chances. Emma's mind raced. The offer was tempting, more than tempting. It was exactly what she needed. But something about the whole situation felt too convenient, too perfect. What's the catch? No catch. Just an opportunity. There's always a catch with men like you. Rich, powerful, used to getting whatever you want. For a moment, Alexander looked almost hurt. Then his expression became unreadable again. Think about it, he said, standing up. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket, the same one from the photo he'd sent her. My personal number is on there. Call me when you decide. He started to walk away, then turned back. For what it's worth, Emma, not everything is about power. Sometimes it's just about doing the right thing. Emma watched him leave, her heart pounding. She looked down at the business card in her hands, then up at Alexander's retreating figure. He paused at the cafe door and looked back at her one more time. There was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. Regret, maybe, or longing. Then he was gone, leaving Emma alone with her questions and the strange feeling that her life was about to change completely. She stared at the business card, Alexander's words echoing in her mind.
Emma stared at Alexander's business card for another 10 minutes before finally slipping it into her purse. She couldn't shake the feeling that accepting his offer would be like making a deal with the devil, even if the devil had surprisingly kind eyes. She spent the rest of the afternoon at 2 more interviews, both of which went nowhere. By evening, she was back at Sarah's apartment, exhausted and discouraged. "Any luck today?" Sarah asked, looking up from her laptop where she was working on her own graphic design projects. 2 more rejections and a very strange encounter with Alexander Kane. The Ice King himself? What happened? Emma told her about the coffee shop meeting, watching Sarah's expression grow more skeptical with each detail. "He just happened to be at the same cafe?" Sarah said when Emma finished. "That's not suspicious at all. He offered me a freelance project, 6 months working directly with him." "Emma, no. Tell me you didn't say yes." "I didn't say anything. I took his card and left." Sarah relaxed slightly. "Good, because this has 'trap' written all over it." Emma's phone buzzed. A text from her landlord. "Rent payment required by Friday or eviction proceedings begin Monday." Emma's stomach dropped. Today was Tuesday. That gave her 3 days to come up with 2 months' rent plus late fees, nearly $4,000. "What is it?" Sarah asked, noticing Emma's pale face. She showed her the text. Sarah's expression darkened. "That bastard! You've been a perfect tenant for 2 years. Except for the part where I stopped paying rent. Because you lost your job through no fault of your own." Sarah stood up, pacing. "Okay, we'll figure this out. I can lend you some money." "Sarah, no. You're already letting me stay here. I can't take your money, too." "Then what are you going to do?" Emma looked at her purse, where Alexander's business card was waiting. "I don't know." The next 2 days passed in a blur of fruitless job searching and growing panic. By Thursday evening, Emma had applied to 47 positions and received 32 rejections. The remaining 15 companies hadn't even bothered to respond. She was sitting on Sarah's couch, staring at her laptop screen, when there was a knock at the door. "Expecting someone?" Emma asked. Sarah shook her head, walking to the door. She looked through the peephole and her face went white.
"Emma," she whispered, "it's him." "Who?" "Alexander Kane. He's standing in my hallway in a $3,000 suit." Emma's heart jumped. "What? How does he even know where you live?" "Good question." Sarah looked through the peephole again. "He's holding some kind of folder." Another knock, more insistent this time. Emma stood up, smoothing her hair nervously. "I guess I should answer it." Sarah opened the door, and there he was, Alexander Kane, looking completely out of place in the modest apartment building hallway. "Ms. Parker, I hope I'm not intruding." "How did you find me?" Emma asked. "You listed Sarah Murphy as your emergency contact in your employee file. It wasn't hard to track down her address." Sarah crossed her arms. "That's not creepy at all." Alexander had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. "You're right. I should have called first. But I was afraid you wouldn't answer." "What do you want?" Emma asked. Alexander held up the folder. "I brought the contract for the freelance position we discussed." Emma's pulse quickened. "You were serious about that?" "Completely serious. May I come in?" Sarah looked at Emma, who nodded reluctantly. They moved to the living room, Alexander looking strangely formal sitting on Sarah's colorful couch. "Before we discuss business," Alexander said, "I want you to know that I had nothing to do with your firing. In fact, I tried to stop it." "But you're the CEO. Can't you override your uncle's decisions?" Alexander's jaw tightened. "Richard is a board member and my father's brother. He has significant influence, especially regarding personnel decisions. By the time I learned what was happening, the termination papers were already filed." Emma studied his face. "So you really didn't want me fired?" "No, I thought it was a mistake from the beginning." "But then why didn't you reinstate me?" Alexander was quiet for a moment. "Because Richard had already spread word about the alleged corporate espionage. Bringing you back immediately would have looked like favoritism or poor judgment on my part." "But offering me a freelance project doesn't?" Sarah interjected. "Hiring freelance talent is within my purview as CEO, and the terms of this contract will speak for themselves." He opened the folder and handed Emma several pages of documents. "This is a 6-month consulting agreement for our European expansion campaign. All the details are outlined there." Emma took the papers, trying to keep her hands steady. The first thing she noticed was the salary figure. Her eyes widened. "This can't be right." "What?" Sarah leaned over to look. Emma pointed to the compensation section. "It's 3 times what I was making before." "The project is complex and time-sensitive. The compensation reflects the level of expertise required." Sarah frowned. "Nobody pays that much for freelance marketing work. What's the real catch?" Alexander met her gaze steadily. "There is no catch, just the expectation of exceptional work." Emma continued reading, her mind racing. The terms were incredibly generous, not just the salary, but the creative freedom, the resources she'd have access to, the timeline that gave her room to develop truly innovative campaigns. It was everything she'd ever wanted in a professional opportunity. "Why me?" she asked again. "Because you're the best person for the job. There are hundreds of marketing consultants in New York with more experience than me." Alexander leaned forward slightly. "But none of them redesigned a failing tech company's entire brand identity and increased their market share by 40% in 6 months." Emma blinked. "How do you know about the Henderson account in that much detail?" "Because I've been following your work, Emma, for longer than you might think." Sarah stood up abruptly. "Okay, this is getting weird. Emma, can I talk to you in the kitchen?" In the small kitchen, Sarah grabbed Emma's arm. "This is crazy. Nobody offers freelance contracts like this without expecting something in return. Maybe he really does just want good marketing work. Or maybe he wants you. Have you considered that?" Emma's cheeks flushed. "That's ridiculous. Alexander Kane could have any woman he wants. He's not interested in a fired marketing coordinator." "Then explain the salary. Explain him tracking you down. Explain any of this." Emma looked back towards the living room, where Alexander sat waiting patiently. "I don't know. But Sarah, I need this job. I have until tomorrow to pay my rent or I'm homeless." Sarah's expression softened. "Emma, I know it seems too good to be true, but what if it isn't? What if this is just a legitimate opportunity? And what if it's not? What if you're walking into something you can't handle?" Emma was quiet for a moment. "Then I'll deal with it when it happens. But right now, I don't have a choice." They returned to the living room. Alexander looked up expectantly. "I'll take the position," Emma said. Something flickered across Alexander's face. Relief, maybe, or satisfaction. "Good, I'm glad. But I have conditions." His eyebrows rose slightly. "Such as?" "This is strictly professional. I work for you, but I'm not your employee. I am an independent contractor with my own standards and boundaries." "Of course. And if you try to manipulate me or control me beyond the scope of this project, I walk away immediately." Alexander stood up, extending his hand. "Agreed." Emma shook his hand, trying to ignore the way her skin tingled at the contact. "When do I start?" "Monday morning, 9 a.m. I'll have an office prepared for you." After Alexander left, Sarah turned to Emma with worried eyes. "I hope you know what you're doing." Emma looked at the signed contract in her hands, her stomach churning with a mixture of excitement and terror. "So do I."
Working together. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Emma stood outside Kane Industries at 8:45, wearing her best suit and carrying a new leather briefcase that Sarah had insisted on buying her as a good luck gift. The building looked different now. 3 weeks ago, she'd been escorted out in shame. Today, she was walking back in as a highly paid consultant. But instead of feeling confident, Emma felt like she was entering enemy territory. The security guard at the front desk didn't recognize her. When she gave her name, he checked his list twice before finally handing her a visitor's badge. 28th floor, he said. Mr. Kane's assistant will meet you there. Emma's stomach twisted as the elevator climbed. She'd never worked on the executive floors before. Her old desk had been on the 15th floor with the other mid-level employees. The elevator doors opened to reveal a completely different world. Everything was sleek glass and polished marble. Abstract art hung on the walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered stunning views of Central Park. A woman in her early 30s stood waiting by the elevator. She was tall, blonde, and beautiful in the kind of effortless way that came from expensive everything. Her smile was perfect and completely cold. "Emma Parker?" The woman extended a manicured hand. "I'm Jessica Montgomery, Mr. Kane's executive assistant." Emma shook her hand, immediately feeling underdressed despite her best suit. "Nice to meet you." "I'm sure it is." Jessica's smile never wavered, but her blue eyes were calculating. "Mr. Kane asked me to show you to your office. This way." They walked down a hallway lined with conference rooms and executive offices. Emma could see other employees glancing at her curiously through the glass walls. "So," Jessica said as they walked, "freelance marketing consultant. That's quite a unique arrangement." "Mr. Kane said European expansion needed specialized attention." Jessica's tone suggested she didn't believe that for a second. "Here we are." She opened a door to reveal a spacious office with windows overlooking the city. It was easily twice the size of any workspace Emma had ever had, complete with a sitting area and its own coffee machine. "This is very generous," Emma said. "Isn't it just?" Jessica's smile grew sharper. "Mr. Kane specifically requested this office for you. Prime real estate on the executive floor. I'm sure you're wondering what you did to deserve such special treatment." Emma met her gaze steadily. "I assume it's because of my qualifications?" "Of course, your qualifications." Jessica glanced at a tablet in her hands.
Mr. Kane would like to see you in conference room A in 15 minutes. I'll send you the calendar invite. After Jessica left, Emma sat behind her new desk and tried to process what had just happened. The woman clearly resented her presence, and Emma couldn't blame her. From the outside, this whole arrangement must look suspicious. Her computer chimed with the calendar invite. Conference room A was just down the hall. Emma arrived to find Alexander already there, along with 3 other executives she didn't recognize. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, his professional mask slipped. She saw something warmer in his gray eyes before he quickly composed himself. Emma, thank you for joining us. Please, have a seat. The next hour was a whirlwind of market research, demographic analysis, and strategic planning. Alexander laid out his vision for expanding Kane Industries into the European market, starting with London and Paris. Emma listened carefully, taking notes and studying the preliminary data. The more she heard, the more problems she identified with their current approach. Questions? Alexander asked when he finished his presentation. The other executives shook their heads, but Emma raised her hand. Actually, yes, several. Alexander's eyebrows rose slightly. Go ahead. Emma stood up, walking to the presentation screen. Your market research focuses heavily on corporate partnerships and B2B sales, but looking at these demographics, I think you're missing a huge opportunity. She pointed to a section of the data. European consumers, especially in the 18 to 35 demographic, are much more brand conscious than your research suggests. They're not just buying products, they're buying identity and values. One of the executives frowned. We've always focused on corporate sales. It's more reliable. But it's also more limiting, Emma said, turning to face the room. Kane Industries has always been seen as a corporate giant, cold, efficient, profitable. That works in America, but European consumers want authenticity. They want to feel connected to the brands they choose. Alexander leaned forward in his chair, his attention completely focused on her. What are you suggesting? A dual approach. Yes, maintain your corporate partnerships, but simultaneously launch a consumer-focused campaign that repositions Kane Industries as a company that cares about individual stories and personal values. She grabbed a marker and started sketching on the whiteboard. Instead of leading with your company's achievements, lead with your customers' dreams. Show how Kane Industries helps real people build the lives they want. The room was quiet as she worked, outlining a campaign structure that was completely different from anything Kane Industries had ever done before. This is quite a departure from our usual strategy, one executive said skeptically. Which is exactly why it could work, Emma replied. Your competitors are all using the same corporate playbook. This would set you apart. She turned to look at Alexander. But it would require a complete shift in how you think about branding. Are you willing to take that risk? Alexander was silent for a long moment, studying her sketches on the whiteboard. The other executives exchanged glances, clearly thinking Emma had overstepped. Then Alexander smiled. I think it's brilliant. The executives looked surprised, but Emma felt a rush of vindication. I want you to develop this concept further. Full campaign strategy, timeline, budget projections. Can you have something ready by Friday? Absolutely. Excellent. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. Emma, could you stay for a moment? The other executives filed out, leaving Emma alone with Alexander. He stood up and walked to the windows, looking out at the city. That was impressive, he said without turning around. Thank you. You realize you just told 3 senior vice presidents that their entire approach was wrong. Emma's confidence wavered slightly. I was just offering an alternative perspective? Alexander turned to face her, and Emma was struck again how different he looked when he smiled. Don't apologize. Bold thinking is exactly what we need. They stood there for a moment, and Emma became aware of how quiet the conference room was, how close Alexander was standing. Something in the air between them felt charged, electric. Emma, Alexander said softly, then seemed to catch himself. He stepped back, his professional demeanor returning. "I'd like to discuss this campaign further. Are you free for dinner tomorrow night?" Emma's heart skipped. "To discuss the campaign?" "Yes, there are some aspects of the European market that would be better discussed away from the office." Emma knew she should say no. This was exactly the kind of boundary she'd insisted on imposing. But looking at Alexander now, she found herself nodding. "All right, for the campaign." "For the campaign," Alexander agreed, but something in his eyes suggested we both knew it might be more than that.
The dinner. The next evening, Emma stood in front of Sarah's mirror, changing clothes for the third time. She'd started with a conservative black dress, then switched to a business suit, and now she was back to the dress. "It's just a work dinner," she muttered to herself. "Then why are you acting like it's a date?" Sarah called from the living room. "Because—" Emma paused, staring at her reflection. "Because I don't know what it is." She'd suggested meeting at a neutral restaurant near the office, somewhere public and professional. But Alexander had insisted on choosing the place himself, saying he knew somewhere quiet where they could talk without interruption. Emma's phone buzzed with a text. "Reservation at Rossini's at 7. Looking forward to our discussion. A.K." Rossini's. Emma's stomach flipped. She'd heard of the place, an intimate Italian restaurant in the Upper East Side, where reservations were booked months in advance and a single meal cost more than most people's weekly salary. "This is not a business dinner," Sarah said, reading over Emma's shoulder. "He said it was about the campaign. At Rossini's? Emma, that place is for marriage proposals and anniversary dinners, not marketing meetings." Emma's hands trembled slightly as she applied lipstick. Maybe it was the only place he could get a reservation on short notice. Or maybe Alexander Kane is interested in more than your marketing expertise. 30 minutes later, Emma stood outside Rossini's, feeling completely out of place. The restaurant was tucked into a historic brownstone, with soft lighting glowing through curtained windows. A valet took her taxi, and she walked through doors held open by a doorman in white gloves. Inside, the atmosphere was undeniably romantic. Candlelit tables were scattered throughout intimate dining rooms, and soft jazz played in the background. Fresh flowers adorned every surface, and the lighting was so dim that conversations became whispered secrets. "Miss Parker?" The hostess smiled warmly. "Mr. Kane is waiting for you." Emma followed her through the main dining room to a secluded corner table by a fireplace. Alexander stood when he saw her, and Emma's breath caught. He'd changed from his business suit into dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that made his gray eyes even more striking. "Emma, you look beautiful." Emma's cheeks warmed. "Thank you. This place is not what I expected." "I hope you don't mind. I thought we could use somewhere private to discuss your campaign ideas without worrying about competitors overhearing." Emma sat down, hyper-aware of how close Alexander was as he pushed in her chair. "Right, the campaign." A waiter appeared with a wine menu, and Alexander ordered a bottle of something expensive in Italian without consulting Emma. Under normal circumstances, she would have been annoyed by the presumption. Instead, she found herself oddly charmed. "So," Emma said, trying to regain her professional composure, "I've been thinking about the timeline for the European launch." "Have you?" Alexander smiled, and Emma noticed he seemed more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. "Tell me." For the next 20 minutes, they discussed market research and demographic targeting while sharing an appetizer of burrata and prosciutto. But as the wine began to work its magic, their conversations started to drift. "Can I ask you something?" Emma said, setting down her glass. "Of course." "Why did you really take over Kane Industries? Most people your age would have sold their father's company and traveled the world." Alexander was quiet for a moment, swirling the wine in his glass. "Because my father built something meaningful, and I couldn't bear to see it destroyed by strangers.
But you were only 27 when he died. That's a lot of pressure. It was. Still is sometimes. He looked up at her. Running a company like Kane Industries means you can't really trust anyone. Everyone wants something from you. Money, connections, opportunities. You never know if people like you for who you are or what you can do for them. Emma felt a pang of sympathy. Is that why you don't date much? Alexander's eyebrows rose. You've been reading the gossip columns. Emma blushed. Sarah mentioned that you're not exactly known for long relationships. Hard to have a relationship when you're never sure about someone's motives. Take a sip of wine. What about you? No boyfriend? Not for a while. Turns out men don't like it when you're more ambitious than they are. Their loss. The waiter brought their entrees, osso buco for Alexander and risotto for Emma. As they ate, Alexander continued to open up in ways that surprised her. Do you know what the hardest part of my job is? The responsibility? The isolation. I make decisions that affect thousands of people, but I have to make them alone. The buck stops with me, always. Emma set down her fork. That sounds exhausting. It is, but it's also... He paused, searching for words. It's what my father would have wanted. He built Kane Industries from nothing. I can't let his legacy fail. What would you do if you weren't running the company? Alexander smiled, and for a moment he looked years younger. Architecture, maybe. I studied it in college before my father got sick. I used to love designing buildings, creating spaces where people could live and work and be happy. You could still do that. Design the new Kane Industries offices. Maybe I will. Alexander looked at her intently. What about you? If you could do anything, what would it be? This, actually. Creating campaigns that matter, that connect with people on an emotional level. Marketing doesn't have to be about manipulation. It can be about truth. Is that why you challenged our entire European strategy? Emma nodded. Your current approach treats consumers like numbers on a spreadsheet, but people aren't numbers. They're individuals with hopes and fears and dreams. You're passionate about it. I am, maybe too passionate. My last boyfriend said I cared more about my work than I did about him. Did you? Emma considered the question. Maybe, but shouldn't you be with someone who inspires you to be better at what you love? Alexander leaned forward slightly. Yes, you should. There was something in his voice that made Emma's pulse quicken. The conversation had shifted from professional to personal without her noticing, and now she felt like they were walking on dangerous ground. Alexander, she said carefully, can I ask you something else? Anything. Well, that day in the cafe, you said you'd been watching my work for months. What did you mean by that? Alexander set down his wine glass and met her eyes. I meant exactly what I said. I've been following your campaigns, reading your reports, watching how you think and create. But why? I was just a mid-level employee. No, Emma, you were never just anything. Alexander's voice was quiet but intense. From the moment I saw your first presentation, I knew you were different. The way you see people, the way you understand what motivates them, it's extraordinary. Emma's heart was racing now. How long have you been watching me? Since your second month at Kane Industries, 18 months ago. Emma stared at him. 18 months? But we never even spoke before last week. I know. I wanted to. But Alexander ran his hand through his hair. You worked for my company. It would have been inappropriate. But now it's not inappropriate? Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Now you don't work for my company. You work with me. The distinction was subtle but significant, and Emma felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Alexander, she said carefully, what are you saying? He reached across the table and touched her hand gently. I'm saying that maybe this dinner isn't just about the campaign, and maybe it never was. Emma stared down at their joined hands, her mind spinning. Everything she thought she understood about their arrangement suddenly seemed questionable. What exactly had she gotten herself into?
Secrets revealed. Emma pulled her hand away from Alexander's, her heart pounding. I need some air. She stood up quickly, nearly knocking over her wine glass. Alexander caught it before it could fall, his reflexes quick. Emma, wait. But she was already walking toward the restaurant's entrance, needing space to think. Alexander followed, leaving money on the table without waiting for the check. Outside, the cool October air hit Emma's flushed cheeks. She walked a few steps down the sidewalk before stopping, Alexander close behind her. I shouldn't have said that, Alexander said quietly. Not like that. Emma turned to face him. Which part? The part where you admitted you've been watching me for 18 months, or the part where you basically admitted this whole job offer is because you're interested in me? Both. Neither. Alexander ran his hair through his hair, looking frustrated. It's complicated, Emma. Then uncomplicated. Tell me the truth. Alexander looked around the busy street, then gently took her arm. Not here. Can we go somewhere private? Against her better judgment, Emma found herself nodding. Alexander hailed a taxi, and they rode in tense silence to Central Park. The driver dropped them near the entrance, and they walked along one of the quieter paths. The truth is, Alexander said finally, I noticed you long before you were fired, but I also noticed that my uncle had been watching you too. Emma stopped walking. What do you mean? Richard has always been suspicious of employees he considers too ambitious. When your campaigns started getting attention from the board, he saw you as a threat. A threat to what? Alexander's jaw tightened. To his plans for the company. Richard wants Kane Industries to stay exactly as it is, profitable but predictable. Your ideas challenge that. So he set me up? He found someone in Morrison Marketing willing to fabricate evidence of corporate espionage. The emails, the phone records, they were all fake. Emma felt sick. You've known this the whole time? I suspected from the beginning. I hired a private investigator to prove it, but by then the damage was done. Your reputation was already compromised. Emma stared at him. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because Richard is still a board member, and he's still my uncle. Accusing him of fraud without absolute proof would tear the company apart. So you let me think I was fired for something I didn't do? No. Alexander stopped walking and turned to face her. I offered you the consulting position because I knew you deserved better, and because I couldn't stand seeing you hurt. Emma's anger warred with confusion. Alexander, this is insane. You're telling me your uncle destroyed my career because he didn't like my marketing campaigns? I'm telling you my uncle destroyed your career because he saw you as competition, and he was right to be worried. Competition for what? Alexander was quiet for a moment. For influence over me. Emma's eyes widened. He knows you're interested in me? Richard's not stupid. He's seen the way I look at you. The way you look at me? Alexander stepped closer. Emma, I've been fighting my feelings for you for months. The consulting job, this dinner, I told myself it was about giving you a fair chance, but the truth is, I just wanted to be near you. Emma felt dizzy. This is too much. I need to go home. Emma, please. No, Alexander, I need time to think about all of this. She started walking back toward the park entrance, but Alexander caught up with her. Let me at least drive you home. I'll take a taxi. Emma, wait. Alexander's voice was urgent. There's something else you need to know. She turned around, dreading what he might say next. Richard knows about the consulting job. He's not happy about it. What do you mean? He cornered me yesterday after our meeting. He said if I didn't end your contract immediately, he'd make sure the board questioned my judgment. Emma's blood ran cold. He threatened you? He threatened us both. He said he'd find a way to destroy your reputation permanently if I didn't let you go. Emma stared at Alexander in shock. And what did you tell him? I told him that my business decisions weren't subject to his approval. Alexander, you can't fight your whole family for me. I'm not worth that. Alexander stepped forward and gently touched her face. Yes, you are. The tenderness in his voice nearly broke Emma's resolve. For a moment she wanted to lean into his touch,
to let herself believe that this could work. Then reality crashed back. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said, stepping back. "I can't be the reason you destroy your relationship with your family." "You're not destroying anything. Richard is." "It doesn't matter. The result is the same." Emma's voice was shaking. "I should quit the consulting job." "No." Alexander's voice was firm. "Don't let him win." "This isn't about winning or losing. This is about protecting yourself." "What about protecting you?" Emma's eyes filled with tears. "I've been taking care of myself for a long time, Alexander. I'll be fine." But as Emma walked away, leaving Alexander standing alone in Central Park, Emma wasn't sure if either of them would be fine after this.
Crossing lines. The next few days passed in a haze of awkward professionalism. Emma threw herself into developing the European campaign, working late into the evenings to avoid having to make small talk with Alexander during regular office hours. But Alexander seemed to have the same strategy. She'd catch glimpses of him in the hallway or through conference room windows, but they hadn't spoken privately since their dinner at Rossini's. On Thursday evening, Emma was still at her desk at 9 p.m., surrounded by market research and campaign mock-ups. The executive floor was empty except for security, and the silence was broken only by the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sounds of traffic from the street below. She was so absorbed in her work that she didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway until there was a soft knock on her office door. Alexander stood in the doorway, holding 2 takeout containers and looking uncertain. "I brought Chinese food," he said. "I figured you probably hadn't eaten." Emma's stomach growled in response, betraying her. She hadn't eaten since breakfast, too nervous and distracted to think about food. "That's thoughtful, but just food, Emma. No agenda." Emma looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay, just food." Alexander came in and set the containers on her conference table. The smell of lo mein and sweet and sour chicken filled the air, making Emma realize how hungry she actually was. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes, the tension from earlier in the week slowly dissipating. "How's the campaign coming?" Alexander asked finally. "Good. Really good, actually." Emma's enthusiasm for her work overcame her personal awkwardness. "I think you're going to love what I've developed." "Show me." Emma walked to her computer and pulled up the presentation she'd been working on. As she clicked through the slides explaining her strategy and creative concepts, she forgot about everything except the work. "This is incredible," Alexander said when she finished. "Emma, this is exactly what we need." "You think so?" "I know so. This campaign will completely revolutionize how people see Kane Industries." Emma felt a rush of professional pride. "It's different from anything you've done before." "That's what makes it perfect." They stood there looking at the presentation on her screen, and Emma became aware how close Alexander was standing. She could smell his cologne, could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Emma," he said softly. She turned to look at him, and the air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. Alexander's gray eyes were intense, searching her face. "We should probably—" But Alexander reached out and gently touched her hand. "Should probably what?" Emma's breath caught. "Should probably maintain professional boundaries." "Probably," Alexander agreed, but he didn't move his hand. Emma knew she should step away. Every rational part of her brain was screaming that this was a bad idea. But Alexander's touch was sending electricity through her entire body, and she found herself unable to move. "This is dangerous," she whispered. "I know. If anyone found out, there's no one here but us." Alexander stepped closer, and Emma's heart began racing. The office suddenly felt smaller, more intimate. The city lights outside the windows created a romantic backdrop that made everything feel like a dream. "Emma," Alexander said, his voice rough, "I've been trying to stay away from you." "I know, so have I. It's not working." Emma looked up into his eyes and saw her own confusion and desire reflected there. "No, it's not. I can't stop thinking about you. Alexander,
I know this is complicated. I know there are a dozen reasons why we shouldn't do this. Then why are we? Alexander's hand moved to cup her face gently. Because sometimes the heart wants what it wants, regardless of logic. Emma leaned into his touch without thinking. This is crazy. Maybe. But I've never felt this way about anyone before. How do you feel? Alexander's thumb traced across her cheek. Like I've been waiting my whole life for you. Emma's resolve finally crumbled. Alexander. He leaned down, his lips just inches from hers. Tell me to stop, and I will. Emma looked into his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and desire. I can't. Can't what? I can't tell you to stop. Alexander smiled softly. Good. He kissed her then, gently at first, then more passionately as Emma responded. Her hands found their ways to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath her palms. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Emma, Alexander whispered against her forehead. What are we doing? I don't know, she admitted, but I don't want to stop. Alexander pulled back to look at her. Are you sure? Emma nodded, then immediately shook her head. No, I'm not sure about anything, but I'm tired of fighting this. Alexander kissed her again, and Emma forgot all the reasons this was a bad idea. She forgot about Richard Kane and office politics and professional boundaries. All she could think about was how right this felt and how terrifying that was.
The competition. The next morning, Emma arrived at the office early, hoping to avoid any awkward encounters with Alexander. Their kiss the night before had left her confused and exhilarated in equal measure. She was reviewing campaign timelines when her phone rang. Unknown number. Emma Parker speaking. Miss Parker, this is David Chen from Morrison Marketing. I was hoping we could meet today to discuss a potential opportunity. Emma's blood ran cold. Morrison Marketing, the company that had supposedly received her leaked information. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in... I think you'll want to hear this offer, Miss Parker. It's quite generous, and it concerns your current situation at Kane Industries. Emma's grip tightened on the phone. What do you mean? Let's just say we're prepared to offer you a position that would solve a lot of your current problems. Can we meet for coffee this afternoon? Every instinct told Emma to hang up, but curiosity won. Where? The Starbucks on 5th Avenue and 42nd, 2 o'clock. After David hung up, Emma stared at her phone. This had to be connected to Richard Kane somehow. But what did Morrison Marketing want with her? At exactly 2 o'clock, Emma walked into the crowded Starbucks. A well-dressed Asian man in his 40s waved her over to a corner table. Miss Parker, thank you for coming. I'm David Chen, Senior Vice President at Morrison Marketing. Emma sat down cautiously. What do you want, Mr. Chen? He smiled. Direct. I like that. We want to offer you a position as creative director for our European expansion. Emma's eyebrows rose. You're expanding into Europe too? We are, and we need someone with your particular expertise. My expertise in what? David leaned forward. In Kane Industries' marketing strategies. Emma stood up immediately. If you think I'm going to sell information about my current client, please sit down. You're misunderstanding me. Reluctantly, Emma sat back down. We're not asking you to betray any confidences, David continued. We're simply offering you a legitimate position doing what you do best, creating innovative marketing campaigns. Why me? Because you're talented, and because you understand the European market in ways that most American consultants don't. David slid a folder across the table. The salary and benefits package is outlined there. I think you'll find it very attractive. Emma opened the folder and nearly choked. The salary was double what Alexander was paying her, plus stock options and a signing bonus that would solve all her financial problems permanently. This is... Emma stared at the numbers. This is an incredible offer. It is,
But there's a time limit. We need an answer by tomorrow morning. Emma looked up. Why the rush? David's expression grew serious. Because we know about your current arrangement with Kane Industries, and we know it's temporary. What do you mean? We have it on good authority that Richard Kane's uncle is pressuring him to terminate your consulting contract, probably within the week. Emma's heart sank. How do you know that? Let's just say Richard Kane and Morrison Marketing have mutual interests. The pieces clicked into place. Richard Kane is behind this offer. David didn't deny it. Mr. Kane believes you deserve better than the treatment you've received. This position would give you the security and respect you've earned. Emma closed the folder. In exchange for what? Nothing unethical, simply your expertise and creativity, applied to our campaigns instead of theirs. And the timing of my departure from Kane Industries? David shrugged. The sooner the better, from our perspective, but that's your choice. Emma stared at the folder. The offer was legitimate, incredibly generous, and would solve every one of her problems. But accepting it would mean abandoning Alexander just when their relationship was becoming something real. I need time to think about this. Of course, but remember, the offer expires tomorrow at 9 a.m. That evening, Emma sat in her apartment staring at the Morrison Marketing contract. Sarah had already gone to bed, leaving Emma alone with her thoughts. Her phone buzzed. A text from Alexander. Working late again? You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Emma smiled, despite her confusion. Another text followed. I know last night was complicated. Can we talk tomorrow? Emma started to type a response, then stopped. How could she tell him about Morrison Marketing's offer? How could she explain that she was considering abandoning him for financial security? But how could she not consider it? The offer was everything she'd ever wanted professionally, and it would mean she'd never have to worry about money again. Her phone rang. Alexander's name appeared on the screen. Hi, she said, trying to keep her voice normal. Hi. You sounded stressed in your text response. Wait, you didn't respond to my text. Sorry, I was just thinking. About last night? Among other things. Emma, I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. What happened between us doesn't change our professional relationship unless you want it to change. And what if I do want it to change? Alexander was quiet for a moment. Well, then we'll figure it out together. Emma closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her decision. Alexander, can I ask you something? Anything. If you had to choose between your family and someone you cared about, what would you do? Is this about Richard? Emma hesitated. Hypothetically, I'd choose the person I cared about. Family is supposed to support you, not control you. Emma's throat tightened. Even if it meant losing everything? Emma, what's wrong? You sound upset. I'm fine, just tired. Are you sure? Because if Richard has approached you, he hasn't. Okay. But Emma, if anything happens, anything at all, I want you to call me immediately. Promise me. Emma stared at the Morrison Marketing contract. I promise. After they hung up, Emma sat in the dark, weighing her options. Financial security versus emotional uncertainty. Professional advancement versus personal feelings. By morning, she would have to choose between the safe path and the unknown.
The breakdown. Emma didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table until dawn, staring at the Morrison Marketing contract and trying to make an impossible decision. By the time she arrived at the office, her mind was made up. She couldn't abandon Alexander, regardless of how generous the offer was. Some things were more important than money. She was about to call David Chen when Jessica Montgomery appeared in her office doorway. Miss Parker, Mr. Kane would like to see you in the main conference room. There's a board meeting this morning. Emma's stomach dropped. A board meeting? About what?
Jessica's smile was cold. "I'm sure he'll explain." Emma walked to the conference room on shaking legs. Through the glass walls, she could see Alexander at the head of a long table, surrounded by older men in expensive suits. Richard Kane sat directly across from Alexander, his expression smug. Alexander looked up when she entered, and she saw something like apology in his eyes. "Gentlemen," Alexander said, standing up, "this is Emma Parker, the consultant I mentioned." Richard Kane didn't stand. "Miss Parker, how nice to see you again." Emma forced herself to remain calm. "Mr. Kane." "Please, have a seat," Alexander said, gesturing to a chair near him. Emma sat down, acutely aware that every man in the room was studying her. "Miss Parker," Richard began without preamble, "we've asked you here today to discuss some concerns about your consulting arrangement." "What kind of concerns?" "Questions about the appropriateness of your relationship with my nephew." Emma's face flushed. "I don't know what you mean." "Really? Because our security cameras show you and Alexander working very closely in your office last night. Very closely indeed." Emma's heart stopped. "Security cameras?" "This is a Fortune 500 company, Miss Parker. We monitor all areas for security purposes." Alexander's jaw was tight with anger. "Richard, this is inappropriate." "What's inappropriate, Alexander, is allowing your personal feelings to compromise your professional judgment." Richard stood up and walked to the front of the room, clearly enjoying himself. "Gentlemen, when I hired private investigators to look into Miss Parker's background, I discovered some interesting information." Emma's world began to tilt. "What information?" Richard smiled coldly. "For instance, the fact that you've been in significant financial distress for months. Overdue rent, credit card debt, student loans in default. My personal finances have nothing to do with, they have everything to do with your motives for pursuing my nephew." Alexander stood up abruptly. "That's enough, Richard." "Is it? Because I think the board needs to know that Miss Parker received a very generous offer from Morrison Marketing yesterday. An offer she's been considering despite her supposed loyalty to Kane Industries." Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Every pair of eyes in the room was now fixed on her with suspicion and disgust. How did I know? Because David Chen works for me, Miss Parker. Morrison Marketing has been a subsidiary of Kane Industries for 3 years. Emma stared at Richard in shock. The whole thing had been a setup. "The offer was a test, to see how far you'd go to exploit my nephew's infatuation with you." "That's not true." "Isn't it? You're a mid-level marketing employee with crushing debt who suddenly finds herself earning triple her previous salary and catching the eye of a billionaire? Quite convenient." One of the board members spoke up. "Mr. Kane, are you suggesting that Miss Parker has ulterior motives?" "I'm suggesting that Miss Parker is a gold digger who saw an opportunity and took it." Emma felt tears burning behind her eyes. Around the table, she could see the board members' expressions shifting from curiosity to contempt. "Furthermore," Richard said, "I have evidence that Miss Parker has been using her position to gather information about our European expansion plans." He slid a folder across the table. "Email records showing contact with our European competitors, phone logs, meeting schedules that somehow found their way to rival companies." Emma's hand shook as she opened the folder. The evidence looked damning even though she knew it was fabricated. "This is fake. All of it." "Is it? Because it looks quite real to me." Alexander's voice was deadly quiet. "Richard, you're out of line." "Am I? Or am I protecting this company from a corporate spy who's been using your feelings to gain access to confidential information?" Emma couldn't take it anymore. The weight of everyone's stares, the humiliation, the knowledge that Alexander was watching his family destroy her reputation. It was too much. Tears began streaming down her face. "Stop," she whispered. "I'm sorry?" Richard leaned forward with mock concern. "Stop." Emma's voice was stronger now, but the tears kept coming. "Just stop." She looked around the table at the board members' faces, cold, judgmental, disgusted. Then she looked at Alexander, who was staring at his uncle with barely controlled fury. "I resign," Emma said, standing up on shaking legs. "Effective immediately." "Emma, don't do this," Alexander said. But Emma was already walking toward the door. "I'm sorry I ever believed this could work." She left the conference room with as much dignity as she could muster, but by the time she reached her office, she was sobbing. Emma threw her personal belongings into a box, her hand shaking so badly she could barely function. The beautiful office that had seemed like such a gift now felt like a prison. She was almost finished packing when Alexander appeared in her doorway. "Emma, please don't do this." "Don't do what? Leave? Accept reality?" Emma wiped her eyes angrily. "Your uncle just destroyed my reputation in front of your entire board of directors." "I'll fix this. I'll make them understand." "Understand what? That you hired your girlfriend to do a job she was perfectly qualified for? That won't make this better, Alexander. It'll make it worse." Alexander stepped into the office and closed the door. "You're not just my girlfriend." Emma let out a bitter laugh. "I'm not your girlfriend at all. We kissed once. That doesn't make me anything." "It makes you the woman I'm falling in love with." Emma's breath caught, but she shook her head. Don't say that now." "Why not?" "It's true." "Because it doesn't matter." Emma's voice broke. "Don't you see? Your uncle was right about everything." "He wasn't right about anything." "Yes, he was. I am in financial trouble, and I did consider the Morrison marketing offer, and I am getting involved with my boss." Emma picked up her box. "Maybe I am a gold digger. Maybe I just wanted to believe I was more than that." "Emma, you're the most honest person I know." "Then why do I feel like such a fraud?" Emma walked toward the door, but Alexander blocked her path. "Don't leave, please." Emma looked up at him, seeing pain and desperation in his gray eyes. "I have to. Don't you see? As long as I'm here, your family will use me against you." "I don't care about my family." "Well, I do. Because someday you're going to realize that choosing me cost you everything, and you're going to resent me for it." "That's not true." Emma's tears started fresh. "Alexander, I never should have trusted you. I never should have let myself think this could work." She stepped around him and walked out of Kane Industries for the second time in a month. This time, she knew she'd never be back.
The confession. 3 days later, Emma sat in Sarah's apartment, staring at her laptop screen. She'd applied for 17 jobs and received 12 rejections. The other 5 companies hadn't bothered to respond. Word had gotten out about the Kane Industries situation. In the small world of New York marketing, rumors spread fast. "You have to eat something," Sarah said, setting a sandwich in front of her. "I'm not hungry." "Emma, you can't keep doing this. You haven't left the apartment in 3 days." Emma closed her laptop.
Where am I supposed to go? Everyone thinks I'm a corporate spy and a gold digger. The people who matter know that's not true. Do they? Because I'm starting to wonder if Richard Kane was right about me. Sarah sat down across from her. What do you mean? Maybe I did get involved with Alexander because of his money. Maybe subconsciously, I saw an opportunity and took it. That's ridiculous. You were attracted to him before you knew he was interested in you. Was I? Or did I just tell myself that? Emma's phone buzzed with yet another rejection email. She didn't bother reading it. I need to get out of New York. Start over somewhere else. Emma, no! You can't run away from this. Watch me. Emma was researching jobs in other cities when she heard shouting from the street below. She looked out the window and saw a small crowd gathered around something she couldn't see. What's going on down there? Sarah asked, joining her at the window. Before Emma could answer, there was a knock at the door. Sarah looked through the peephole and her eyes widened. Emma, it's him. Who? Alexander. And he looks determined. Emma's heart jumped. I don't want to see him. Too bad, because he's not leaving. He's been standing out there for an hour. Another knock, more insistent this time. Emma, Alexander's voice called through the door. I know you're in there. Please let me explain. Sarah looked at Emma expectantly. What do you want me to tell him? Emma stared at the door. Part of her wanted to throw it open and run into Alexander's arms, but the rational part of her brain knew that seeing him would only make leaving harder. Tell him I'm not here. Emma Parker! Alexander's voice was louder now. I'm not leaving until you talk to me. Great! My neighbors are going to love this. For 20 minutes, Alexander continued knocking and calling Emma's name. Finally, Emma couldn't take it anymore. She opened the door to find Alexander looking rumpled and exhausted. His usual perfect appearance was completely disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Thank God. Emma, please, just give me 5 minutes. Alexander, what are you doing here? I'm here to tell you that I fired Richard. You what? I fired him. Yesterday. In front of the entire board. You can't fire a board member. Actually, I can. As CEO, I have the authority to remove any board member for cause, and falsifying evidence against a company consultant definitely qualifies as cause. Emma's mind reeled. Alexander, he's your family. No, Emma, you're my family. Or you could be, if you'll let me. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Alexander, don't say things like that. Why not? It's true. Alexander stepped closer. Emma, I've spent the last 3 days cleaning up Richard's mess. I've spoken to every board member individually. I've had our lawyers review all the evidence he fabricated, and I've made it clear that anyone who questions your integrity will be looking for a new job. It doesn't matter. The damage is done. The only damage that matters is what this has done to us. Emma shook her head. There is no us, Alexander. There can't be. Why not? Because I can't trust my own motives anymore. Richard made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. Alexander's expression grew fierce. Richard is a bitter old man who's jealous of anyone with talent and ambition. Don't let him poison your mind against yourself. But what if he was right? What if I am just an opportunist who... Alexander stepped forward and cupped her face in his hands. Emma, stop. Look at me. Emma met his eyes, seeing nothing but sincerity and love. Richard wasn't right about anything, Alexander said softly. You're not a gold digger. You're not a corporate spy. You're not an opportunist. You're the most honest, talented, passionate woman I've ever met. Alexander, I love you, Emma. I've been in love with you since the day you challenged our entire marketing strategy and made me realize that everything I thought I knew about business was wrong." Emma's breath caught. "You love me?" "I love your passion for your work. I love the way you see people as individuals instead of statistics. I love how you make me want to be better than I am." Alexander's voice was gentle but intense. "And I love the way you make me feel like I'm more than just a CEO or a trust fund or a last name." Tears streamed down Emma's face. "I love you too." "Then why are you crying?" "Because I'm scared. Because this feels too good to be true. Because I don't know how to trust this." Alexander wiped away her tears with his thumbs. "Then let me prove it to you. Let me show you that this is real." "How?" Alexander smiled and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. Emma's eyes widened. "Alexander, what are you doing?" "Something crazy. Something my board of directors would probably consider fiscally irresponsible. Something that makes absolutely no sense from a business perspective." He dropped to one knee right there in Sarah's doorway, opening the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Emma Parker, will you marry me?" Emma stared at him in shock. "Alexander, we've known each other for 2 weeks. I've been in love with you for 18 months, and I've never been more certain of anything in my life. This is insane." "Probably, but I don't care about sanity anymore. I care about you." Emma looked down at Alexander, seeing nothing but love and certainty in his gray eyes. Behind him, she could see curious neighbors gathering in the hallway. "Alexander, get up! People are staring." "Let them stare. Answer my question." Emma's heart was racing. Every logical part of her brain was screaming that this was too fast, too crazy, too risky. But looking at Alexander, seeing the love in his eyes, and feeling the truth of her own feelings, Emma realized that sometimes the heart knew things that logic couldn't understand. "Yes," she whispered. Alexander's face broke into the most beautiful smile Emma had ever seen. "Yes? Yes, I'll marry you. But, Alexander, anything. Next time you propose, maybe don't do it in my friend's hallway." Alexander stood up and swept Emma into his arms, spinning her around as their neighbors applauded. "Next time? Emma, there's not going to be a next time. You're stuck with me now." Emma laughed through her tears. "I love you, Alexander Kane." "I love you too, Mrs. Kane." As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, Emma realized that sometimes the most unexpected confessions led to the most beautiful beginnings. 6 months later, Emma stood in the same Kane Industries conference room where Richard had tried to destroy her reputation. But now she was there as Alexander's wife and the company's new director of global marketing. The European campaign had been a massive success, earning Kane Industries recognition as one of the most innovative companies in the world. "Any questions about the quarterly projections?" Emma asked the board members. The same men who had looked at her with suspicion and contempt now regarded her with respect and admiration. After the meeting, Alexander caught up with her in the hallway. "How does it feel to be the most successful marketing director in Kane Industries history?" he asked, pulling her into his arms. "It feels like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Alexander kissed her softly. "I love you, Mrs. Kane." "I love you too. But, Alexander?" "Yes?" "If you ever want to surprise me again, maybe give me a little warning first." "Where's the fun in that?" As they walked hand in hand toward their shared office, Emma reflected on how much her life had changed. A year ago, she was a struggling marketing coordinator with no prospects and mounting debt. Now, she was married to the love of her life and living her professional dreams. Sometimes the most unexpected confessions really did change everything forever. Don't forget to rate this story and subscribe if you want more love stories like this one.